It started with a simple mistake. A letter, folded neatly, with my name on it, but the handwriting, it wasn't mine. I was curious, of course. I unfolded it. And the words inside, they felt like they were written for me. Confessions. Secrets. Dreams. Fears. Every word pulled me in, closer and closer, as if I had known the writer my whole life. But there was one problem. I had no idea who he was. I didn't know if he was near or far, if he was real or just someone playing a cruel game. Yet somehow, with every letter I received, my heart started to follow a path I couldn't resist. A path that led to a stranger. A stranger who somehow knew me, in ways no one ever had. And when I finally decided to find him, I realized my life would never be the same again. It all began on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was sitting at my small apartment desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, scrolling through my emails, trying to ignore the storm outside. And then it arrived. A letter. Not an email, not a text. A real, handwritten letter, carefully folded, with my name on it. But something felt off. The handwriting didn't look familiar. I frowned. Maybe it was from a friend I had forgotten to update my address with. I opened it slowly. The moment I unfolded the paper, I froze. The first line read, "I've watched you from afar, and I don't know if I should even be writing this." My heart skipped. It was intimate. Personal. Yet, I had no idea who he was. As I read on, my curiosity grew. He wrote about small things, how he noticed the way I smiled when I thought no one was watching, how he admired the little things I did for people around me, and how he felt a strange connection to me he couldn't explain. Every word, it hit me differently. It wasn't flattery. It was honesty. Raw, emotional honesty. By the time I finished the letter, I was trembling slightly. Who was this person? How could he know me so well without ever meeting me? And then, at the bottom of the page, a simple line, "I hope these letters find their way to you, even if I never get the courage to say this in person." My mind raced. Was he near me, far away? Was this someone I had seen before but never noticed? I put the letter down, my hands still shaking. I couldn't stop thinking about him. The next day, another letter arrived. And then another. Each one revealed a little more about him, his dreams, his fears, the kind of man he was. And with each letter, I felt myself drawn closer, to a stranger I had never met. I didn't know if this was dangerous. I didn't know if this was real. But I couldn't stop. Something told me, my life was about to change forever. The next morning, I woke up to another envelope resting on my kitchen counter. It wasn't just a coincidence anymore. Someone was deliberately sending these letters, and I had no idea who. I picked it up carefully, noticing the same elegant handwriting, slightly different from the first, but unmistakably the same soul behind it. This one was longer. He wrote about the little things that made him think of me, the way I laughed while reading a book, the way I paused when something reminded me of childhood memories. Every line felt intimate, like he could see straight into my mind. It was impossible. How could a stranger know me so well? My heart raced as I read his words. There was admiration, yes, but also something deeper, almost fragile. He wrote about loneliness. About hope. About the fear of never being noticed by someone who mattered. And in the margins, tiny sketches appeared: flowers, a little cat, a cloud drifting across the sky. It was like he was painting his thoughts with words, leaving little pieces of himself in each letter. By the third day, I began noticing patterns. He would write late at night, sometimes postmarked from another city entirely, sometimes the same as mine. He mentioned streets I had walked down, cafes I frequented, even a song I had hummed while making coffee that morning. It was no longer just mysterious, it was uncanny. I couldn't stop thinking about him. Who was he? Why me? One evening, I finally admitted it out loud, talking to my reflection in the mirror. Who are you? No answer. Just the faint sound of rain against the window. And yet, I knew he was out there. Somewhere. Watching, noticing, writing. By the end of the week, the letters weren't just a secret thrill, they became a lifeline. Each one felt like a piece of a puzzle, slowly forming the image of a man I had never met, yet somehow, already knew. And somewhere deep down, I realized, I had to find him. After the fourth letter arrived, I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was a pattern now, a subtle clue hidden in each one. A cafe he mentioned, a street name tucked between lines, a song lyric scribbled at the bottom. It was almost like he wanted to be found, but wasn't ready to reveal himself yet. I began retracing his hints carefully. I visited the little cafes he mentioned, pretending it was coincidence. I walked down streets described in his letters, my heart racing every time I saw something familiar from his words. Each clue brought me closer, and yet, the mystery only deepened. I kept thinking about the first time I held his letter, the trembling, the shock, the impossibility of it all. And now, I felt a strange connection to a man I had never met. One rainy afternoon, I reached a small, quiet bookstore he had written about. I hesitated at the door, heart pounding. The place was empty, silent, the smell of old books mixing with the damp air outside. I wandered through the aisles, tracing my fingers along the spines, searching for anything familiar. And then, I saw it. A little notebook, tucked on a shelf at the very back. Inside, there were sketches, poems, and a note that made my heart stop. If you've found this, you're closer than you think. Don't be afraid. It was him. He was leaving breadcrumbs, guiding me toward him. The letters had been more than words, they were a map, a puzzle, a confession, and now, a doorway. I felt both terrified and exhilarated. Somewhere out there, the man who knew me better than anyone, without ever meeting me, was waiting. And I realized, I had no choice. I had to follow the trail. Even if it meant stepping into the unknown. I couldn't sleep that night. The notebook in my hands felt like a lifeline, a tangible connection to someone I had never met, yet somehow, already knew. The next morning, I followed the final clue. It led me to a small park in the heart of the city, quiet, tucked away, with early morning sunlight streaming through the trees. I arrived early, pacing slowly along the paths, my hands clenching and unclenching. What if he wasn't there? What if this was just a cruel game? And then I saw him. Sitting on a bench, sketchbook open, pen moving across the page. He didn't notice me at first. His hair fell slightly over his forehead, his expression completely absorbed in his work. I froze. My heart raced, and suddenly all the letters, the clues, the weeks of mystery, they all led to this single moment. I wanted to call his name. But my voice felt stuck. And then, he looked up. Our eyes met. It was instant. Like recognition. Like the letters had bridged the gap between us before we even spoke. He smiled, just slightly, almost shyly. Hi, he said. My voice finally came out, barely a whisper, hi. We didn't know what to say next. Words seemed too small for what had been built through weeks of letters. Instead, we sat in silence. The park was quiet except for birds chirping and leaves rustling. And yet, it felt as if the world had disappeared. I realized then, this was the moment I had been waiting for. The stranger who had touched my life with his words, who had made me feel seen in ways no one ever had, was real. And now, he was here. Right in front of me. For the first time, our hearts could speak face to face. And somehow, it felt like coming home. We sat on that bench for what felt like hours, the morning sunlight painting golden streaks across the park. Finally, I mustered the courage to ask the question that had haunted me since the first letter, why me, why send these letters? He hesitated, his eyes dropping to the sketchbook in his lap. I don't even know where to start, he said softly. Then he told me. He had noticed me months ago, in small ways. A smile in a cafe, a laugh in the bookstore, the way I paused when something reminded me of my childhood. At first, it was curiosity. Then admiration. And slowly, it became something he couldn't ignore. But, he continued, I didn't know how to approach you. I was scared that it would ruin everything if I tried and failed. I felt my chest tighten. You could have just said hi, I whispered, a small smile forming despite myself. He laughed softly, a sound that made my heart ache in the best way. I thought, if I wrote to you, I could show you who I really am, without the awkwardness, without the fear of rejection. I wanted you to know me first, even if from a distance. It made sense. And yet, it was so bold, so intimate, so strangely beautiful. I read every word, I said quietly. Every letter. And I. He reached out, taking my hand gently. You don't have to say it yet, he said. Just sit with me. Let's see where this goes, together. And in that moment, the mystery, the waiting, the uncertainty, it all melted away. We weren't strangers anymore. We weren't just words on paper. We were here. Together. And for the first time, I realized that sometimes, love doesn't start with a meeting. Sometimes, it starts with courage, with vulnerability, with letters that carry the heart of a stranger, until that stranger becomes someone unforgettable. Days turned into weeks, and each meeting with him felt like stepping into a dream I didn't want to wake from. We talked about everything: the letters, our pasts, our fears, the little quirks that made us who we were. And yet, there was an unspoken question hovering between us. Was this real? Could love born from letters survive in the world of reality? One rainy evening, we found ourselves sitting on that same park bench where we first met. The rain drizzled lightly, misting the ground and creating a quiet, intimate cocoon around us. He held my hand, fingers entwined, and looked into my eyes. I need to ask you something, he said. My heart raced. Do you trust me? It was simple. And yet, it felt like the most important question in the world. I think I do, I whispered, unsure if words could capture everything I felt. He smiled softly, brushing a damp strand of hair from my face. You've read my letters, seen the pieces of me I left on paper. But the truth is, I've saved the best parts for you, in person. I swallowed hard, emotions swelling. My hands trembled in his. And I'm ready to show them to you, he continued. If you're willing to see who I really am, and maybe, let me into your life too. Tears welled in my eyes. All the mystery, all the longing, all the nights wondering who he was, it had led to this moment. I nodded, words failing me, but my heart saying everything I couldn't. He leaned in slowly, and our foreheads touched. No letters, no words, no distance, just two hearts finally meeting where they were always meant to. The rain fell softly around us, but it didn't matter. It was no longer just a story in letters. It was real. And in that moment, I realized something I had always known deep inside: love, even when it comes from strangers, can be the most unforgettable kind of all. Years went by. Life moved forward in ways neither of us could have predicted. We lived together in a small apartment that smelled like coffee and old books, just like the cafes where our story had begun. The letters, we kept them all. Carefully folded, stacked in a drawer, reminders of the time when our love existed only on paper. One rainy afternoon, I found myself flipping through them, smiling at the words I had once read with trembling hands. And then, there was a letter I didn't remember seeing before. It was addressed to me, but in a handwriting slightly different than the rest. Curious, I opened it. If you're reading this years later, I hope you know, every word I wrote was the truth. Every letter was meant to bring us together, and somehow, it did. But there's one secret I never told you. My heart skipped. I ran to the kitchen where he was, making coffee like he always did, the sunlight casting warm patterns across the room. I found a letter, I said, holding it out. He froze, a small smile playing on his lips. That one, he asked softly. That's the first letter I ever wrote, but I never mailed it. I kept it for myself, to remind me why I had to find you. I stared at him, speechless. He took my hand, holding it gently, like he had on that very first park bench. Every word you received, every letter, every clue, it was all meant to lead to this, he said. And in that moment, I realized, some love stories begin with strangers, with letters, with mysteries. Some love stories survive the passage of time, the distance, and even the years of waiting. And some love stories are unforgettable because they were always meant to be. We stood there, hands intertwined, looking at the letters on the table. A life built from words, from courage, from trust, and from the magic that happens when strangers become soulmates. And I knew, in that quiet, golden moment, that our story was only just beginning.